The morning sun cast long beams across the lot at Reeves Auto Group, the chrome edges of SUVs and sedans gleaming like polished silver teeth. Rachel Monroe pulled into the parking lot in her old dented Civic, its muffler whispering a tired groan. As she parked it by the customer entrance, her heels clicked on the pavement as she walked, clutching a small folder of paperwork. Her expression was calm but alert, as if preparing herself for a meeting with a surgeon rather than a car dealership. She had signed the paperwork the day before for a certified pre-owned Camry. It had taken nearly 4 hours of haggling, back and forth offers, and polite but persistent pressure. When she'd finally signed, she was promised the car would be detailed overnight and ready for pickup the next morning. But something had gnawed at her gut ever since. Rachel had worked at Reeves Auto Group 3 years ago. As a finance assistant, she had helped reconcile paperwork and noticed a growing trend of phantom fees and inflated service packages that didn't match manufacturer guidelines. She raised questions quietly at first, then more firmly, and was pushed out without ceremony. No formal firing, just hours cut and responsibilities stripped until she left on her own. She hadn't been back since today, though, wasn't about revenge or nostalgia. It was about the Camry and the uneasy feeling she couldn't shake. She stepped inside and was greeted by the familiar artificial brightness of the showroom, the sharp tang of tire, rubber, and coffee. Chad Morrison, the salesman from yesterday, stood near a desk, laughing with another associate. He noticed her and gave a half-wave. "Rachel, right, your car's almost ready. Just got a few signatures to grab SMA update. Come on over." She followed, her eyes on the desk, noticing a new printout clipped to the paperwork she'd signed. Her brow furrowed. "What's this fee?" she asked, tapping her finger on a $399 charge labeled Security Etch Package. Chad leaned back, arms crossed. "Standard stuff, then etching. You signed it. It wasn't on here yesterday. I have the original copy. This wasn't part of the agreement." Chad's smile tightened. "Look, it's minor. Everybody pays it. It's not a big deal." Rachel tilted her head, lips pressed into a line. "I'm not everybody, and I don't pay for something I didn't agree to." That drew a small smirk from Chad. He shifted forward in his chair, voice dropping into something half condescending, half threatening. "You want the car or not? Because I can tell you right now, if we void this, your file gets reopened. Means we start from scratch. Might be another $300 if we rerun numbers. So maybe just relax." The old Rachel, the one who once stayed late after her shift to carefully match every invoice to every D, rose in her chest. But she didn't explode. She simply leaned back, eyes fixed on him. "I want to speak to a manager. They'll say the same thing." "You already signed, Rachel. Just take the car. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be." She didn't move. Chad sighed and rolled his eyes. "You know what? You should be grateful you got approved at all. With that Civic out there, I can tell your credit's not exactly top tier." Behind them, a shadow moved past a dealership's glass doors. Jackson Reeves hadn't planned to visit this branch today, but a quiet message from an internal audit team had kept him up late the night before. Something about increased refund requests, spike in complaint emails, and sales trends that didn't match expectations. He stepped through the automatic doors without a single soul noticing. No fanfare, no announcement. Jackson believed in showing up when people least expected it. His charcoal gray suit bore no dealership logo, but everyone in upper management would recognize him in seconds. He moved silently past the rows of desk pods until he heard Chad's voice, sharp, impatient, and unmistakably entitled. "You signed. Take the car or don't. This ain't kindergarten." Jackson stopped. He turned, saw a woman sitting with posture straight as a ruler, facing a smug young man who didn't recognize who had just walked in. Jackson tilted his head. The woman, there was something familiar about her. Jackson's gaze lingered. 3 years ago, she had worked here. Name tag, Rachel Monroe. A finance assistant with a good eye. She had flagged something odd in the March roll-up invoices service add-ons that didn't match service tickets. She brought it up quietly to her supervisor, then again in a meeting. Her desk was moved, her tasks cut. Eventually, she quit. Now here she was, sitting across from a salesman trying to sneak a false charge past her. Chad, still oblivious, noticed Jackson and gave a lazy nod, assuming he was a customer. "We'll be with you in a sec, boss." Rachel turned her head slightly and saw him. Their eyes met. "Mr. Reeves," she said calmly. Chad blinked. "Wait, what?" Jackson took a step forward. "Rachel, good to see you." Chad's jaw moved, but no sound came out. His entire body went rigid. "Why don't you walk me through this paperwork?" Jackson asked, gesturing to the desk. Chad stammered, trying to regain footing. "It's all standard, just a minor fee." Rachel slid the printout over without a word. Jackson reviewed it, his eyes scanning each line. When he reached the VIN etching fee, he paused. "This dealership stopped charging for this 3 years ago. Corporate decision. I signed the memo." Chad tried to laugh. Maybe it slipped in by accident. You reprinted her contract and added it today, didn't you? Silence. Rachel's expression remained neutral, but the slight arch in her brow spoke volumes. Jackson flipped through the rest of the pages. There was also a $199 interior sterilization charge. Another $89 registration handling fee, one that was already included in the DMV's base cost. He looked at Chad. Do you have any idea how many lawsuits this kind of behavior invites? Chad's throat bobbed. He stood awkwardly. Listen, I just do what everyone else does. It's how we hit numbers. Jackson's voice dropped to a whisper, cold as stone. That's the problem. He turned to Rachel. Would you mind staying for a few more minutes? I want to make this right. Rachel nodded. Where's the floor manager? Jackson asked. Chad mumbled something about checking the back and bolted toward the office. Across the showroom, 2 other sales associates had stopped pretending not to listen. A receptionist behind the front desk discreetly picked up the phone, her eyes wide. Jackson remained standing by the desk, eyes on the now withered contract. His presence was calm but imposing, like thunderclouds over still water. Rachel sat back, not smiling, not gloating, just watching. The tide had turned, but she wasn't done yet. The silence in the showroom carried a deceptive calm. Rachel sat across from Chad in a glass-walled office that boasted a fake sense of transparency. Beyond the clear panels, brochures fluttered on rotating racks and posters promised low AP, hassle-free deals, smiles, and satisfaction. But inside that room, a quiet tension pressed in. Chad Morrison had perfected his act. His shirt was crisp, his Rolex fake but convincing, his teeth too white to be trusted. He spoke with the cadence of someone used to being listened to, not questioned. And when Rachel raised her voice, not in volume, but in confidence, his tone adjusted like a lock clicking shut. I just want to understand, Rachel said, pointing to the fresh sheet on the desk. This fee wasn't here yesterday. Chad offered a mechanical smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. Totally normal, just a couple of corporate adjustments, standard delivery, add-ons. But this one, VIN etching, $395. That wasn't discussed. Again, part of a bundled finance option, he said smoothly, helps you qualify for better terms. Rachel furrowed her brow. You said I was approved yesterday without this. That was before the final review, Chad replied, flipping a pen between his fingers like a magician about to pull a rabbit from a hat. Rates adjust fast. This is actually helping you. Behind the glass, Jackson still hadn't moved. Hidden behind a rack of dusty service pamphlets, his jaw clenched. He remembered that tactic. Say it's helpful, say it's required, smile and make it sound like a gift. But it was garbage. Pure manipulation. Rachel's hands hovered near the manila folder in her lap. Can I take the papers home to review? And that's when Chad's mask slipped. He leaned forward, pen tapping against the table like a metronome of pressure. The car is already being detailed. If you leave now, we'll have to rerun your entire application. Credit, down payment, all of it. He paused, let the threat hang like humidity. Then, sharper, colder, without even lowering his voice. You already signed, so shut up and take the car. It echoed louder than he intended. Loud enough for Rachel's baby to stir in the car seat. Beside her, loud enough for Jackson Reeves to step out of hiding. Jackson didn't storm into the office. He didn't yell, but he simply walked in, like gravity had changed directions. Silent, steady, lethal. That delivery fee, Jackson said, his voice calm but undeniable, is not part of the agreement. Chad blinked at him, momentarily unsure whether this was a customer, a new manager, a lawyer, until the name hit him like a brick wall. Mr. Reeves, he stammered. Sir, I didn't know. VIN etching was discontinued in 2021. Jackson continued, stepping fully into the room chain-wide. I signed the policy myself. Show me where it says otherwise. Chad's fingers twitched on the pen. His confidence, that sharp salesman armor, began to peel off like cheap tint in summer heat. He looked past Jackson, as if hoping anyone would interrupt this waking nightmare. Instead, he saw Tom, the general manager, frozen in the hallway, his coffee halfway to his mouth. Rachel's eyes widened. It was all clicking now. The demeanor, the authority, the name on the glass door. Jackson turned to her, gentling his voice. I'm sorry. This isn't how we treat people. Not under my name. Then sharper, to Tom, I need a conference room. Now. Tom nodded like his neck was on autopilot. Right this way, sir. The conference room was sterile, rectangular, lit by the hum of fluorescent tubes and stale air conditioning. But the energy inside was electric. Jackson sat at the head of the table, Rachel to his right, Chad reluctantly across from them, Tom, lurking near the door like he wished he were anywhere else. Jackson laid out the papers, one by one, circled the fees in red. Electronics Protection Plan. Who authorized that? It's part of the. Chad began. Don't finish that sentence. Jackson interrupted. No stump, no customer signature, no supervisor, override, you know the rule. If they don't consent to it in writing, it doesn't exist. He tossed the next sheet. Interior sterilization. That's not even a line item in our official pricing system. It's in the system, Chad mumbled. Jackson stood. I wrote the system. That silenced the room. You tacked over to grand in garbage onto a closed deal, he said. And you did it because you thought no one would notice. Rachel stayed silent, but the way she held her baby tighter said everything. Jackson turned to her. Softer again. You were quoted $349 a month, right? That only works with a bloated rate and over $2,000 down. That's not a deal. That's a con. Chad pushed against the wall, puffed out his chest one last time. I hit my numbers. Customers leave. Happy. I know how to sell. Jackson looked him dead in the eye. No, you know how to pressure. There's a difference. Tom finally found his voice. I didn't know this was happening. Jackson. I swear. Jackson's stare could have cracked granite. You knew something. The complaints started months ago. Customer satisfaction dropped. You blamed the survey system. He stepped toward Tom. What happened to what we built? Silence. Then, Rachel said it softly, but it cut like a blade. I thought this was a good place. Jackson looked at her. It was supposed to be. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a black business card, and slid it across the table. To her, you'll get a fair deal, he said. No tricks. Someone else will handle your file. Someone who doesn't invent numbers. Then he turned to Chad. Clean out your desk. You're done. Chad's mouth opened, but no words came. Just heat rising up his neck, the red flush of exposure. He grabbed his clipboard, muttered something no one could hear, and walked out. Jackson's eyes never left him. To Tom. We're not done. I'll see you in your office in 10. Walking Rachel out felt like a moment of quiet after a storm. The dealership wasn't loud, but it was suddenly still. Phones not ringing. Conversations paused. Staff leaned out of their cubicles, out from behind partitions, their expressions somewhere between curiosity and guilt. At the front desk, Jackson paused. Did you greet her when she came in? He asked the receptionist. She blinked, caught off guard. I don't remember. Start remembering, Jackson said, voice steady, or start looking. Because this wasn't just about one shady salesman, it wasn't about a VIN etching fee. It was about a culture. The kind that let things slide, that prioritized profit over principle, that looked the other way when small injustices piled into something monstrous. 3 days later, Jackson came back not in a hoodie this time, but in a tailored navy suit. He walked through the front entrance, no disguise, no warning. He shut the doors to the sales floor and called an all-hands meeting. No sales until after 11, he said. Everyone showed up, even the Jackson stood at the front of the break room. No slideshow, no mic. I started this place in 2004, he began. Just me and a dirt lot. I washed every car myself. I didn't have money. I had my name and my word. He looked around the room. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. We let pressure outweigh patience. We saw customers as quotas, not people. He let that land. If you ever added a fee, hoping no one would notice, if you ever talked down to someone for asking too many questions, today's your wake-up call. From the back, a quiet voice rose. Trevor, the lot kid. What if we did do it right? He asked, but no one noticed. Jackson smiled for the first time in days. Then we start noticing. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Trevor. Promotion, full benefits. Training starts Monday. The Monday after the shakeup, Jackson entered the accounting office with a cardboard box filled with old contracts, a thermos of black coffee, and the quiet focus of a man ready to do penance. Rachel's case was only the start. In the weeks prior, his assistant had quietly pulled flagged files, contracts with suspicious add-ons, unexplained price hikes, and payments that didn't match the dealership's official records. There were nearly 200 of them. Some were small, others were outrageous. Jackson sat down at the long conference table and began making calls. One of the first was to a family in Fort Worth, a couple in their 50s who'd bought a used Toyota Camry for their college-bound daughter. Their invoice showed a $3,000 charge labeled Enhanced Weather Shield Package, but the car had no such feature. The dealership never offered one. When the father answered the phone, Jackson introduced himself and explained everything. There was a long silence. I thought we just got played, the man finally said. I figured we were dumb for trusting a dealership again. You weren't dumb, Jackson said. You were taken advantage of. I'm refunding the full amount. There was another pause, then something broke in the man's voice. My wife's a teacher. That money, it was our cushion. I know, Jackson said softly. That's why I'm doing this. By the end of the week, over $120,000 had been refunded across 37 families. Each letter went out with a personal note from Jackson Reeves, and a signed check. Some customers cried, some didn't believe it until the envelope showed up in their mailbox. A few came back to the dealership in person just to say thank you. An elderly Vietnam veteran named Charles brought his granddaughter and a fresh-baked pecan pie. You're doing right by folks, he said. Doesn't happen much anymore. Jackson took the pie and smiled. It's going to start happening more. About 2 weeks after the confrontation, Rachel returned to the dealership not in frustration, not with paperwork, but with her baby on her hip and a small smile on her face. Jackson spotted her the moment she walked in. This time, the receptionist greeted her. The coffee bar was open, and 2 floor managers were already on their feet, ready to help. Jackson met her at the front. "Hey there," he said. "What do you think?" Rachel looked around. "It's different." People smiled this time. "That's a start," he replied. "How's the car?" "Perfect, and the payment actually matches the deal." She shifted her weight, adjusted the baby's blanket. "I came to thank you." "You don't need to know," she interrupted, firm. "You do. You stepped in. You listened. I haven't felt heard like that in years." Jackson's throat tightened slightly. The sincerity in her voice hit deeper than he expected. "I owe you more than a fair deal," he said. "I owe you for opening my eyes." He reached into his jacket and handed her a folder. Inside, an offer letter. Part-time, flexible hours. Childcare stipend. Title: Customer Experience Consultant. Rachel blinked. "What is this?" "You saw what others didn't," he said. "You asked questions others were afraid to. I want your help making sure no one gets steamrolled again. Help us train. Help us listen." Rachel looked at her baby, then back at Jackson. "You serious?" "I don't do gimmicks," he said. She smiled. "Then I'm in." The first to return was Marcia. She had once been the dealership's top finance advisors, sharp, methodical, and brutally honest. She'd quit 9 months earlier after clashing with Chad over creative financing. "I told him one day the house of cards would fall," she said as she stood in Jackson's office, holding her coffee like a badge of honor. Jackson grinned. "You want your desk back?" "No," she said. "I want yours." He laughed. "Give me 3 months," she added, "and I'll retrain the entire finance department." Deal. Then came Brian, the mechanic who'd refused to sign off on a pre-sale inspection for a truck that needed $1,500 in work. Chad had fired him quietly, called it a personnel mismatch. "I hear there's a reckoning going on," Brian said, as he walked into the service bay again, his name patch still on his old uniform. Jackson gave him a hug. "You kept your integrity," he said. "That's all I care about." In the following weeks, more returns, some shy, some bold. All relieved that the dealership they once believed in was returning to its roots. By the end of the month, the staff was stronger than ever. No more fake fees. No more corner-cutting. No more fear. The meeting was held in the showroom. Cars pushed to the side, chairs aligned in rows. A microphone stood on a rolling stand, though Jackson didn't use it. He didn't need volume, he had gravity. Nearly 50 staff members sat in silence as he stepped forward. "I owe you something," he began. "All of you." He looked around. Faces of all kinds, some new, some familiar, some hardened from years of watching the wrong things happen unchecked. "This place carries my name, and with that comes a promise. Somewhere along the way, I let that promise slip. I wasn't watching close enough. I didn't listen fast enough. And people were hurt because of it." He glanced toward Rachel, who sat in the back holding her baby. "People like her, customers like yours, good folks who deserved better." He paused. "From now on, if someone lies to a customer, they answer to me. If someone cuts corners, they're out. And if you ever feel like we're slipping a dune, want you to say something." To my face, there was a quiet rustle of nods, of people leaning in not out of fear, but out of belief. This dealership was built on honesty, not hustle. That's how we move forward, together. And then, without a speechwriter or a PR rep, Jackson did something rare in American business. He apologized. Out loud, from the heart. And the team applauded not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Later that night, after the meeting, Jackson returned to his office. The dealership was quiet, only the soft hum of cleaning machines and distant traffic outside the bay doors. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk, the one he hadn't touched in years. Inside was an old manila envelope, brittle with time. He pulled out the photograph that had showed a younger version of himself, barely 20, in a dusty pair of jeans and a faded ball cap. Beside him stood his father, gruff, steady, and kind, holding a garden hose as the two of them scrubbed clean the wooden dealership sign they'd built by hand. Reeves Auto and Truck. No neon, no branding, just wood, paint, and belief. Jackson stared at the photo for a long time. He ran a finger over the edge. He remembered the heat of that day, the sweat, the laughter. He remembered his father's words, spoken over soap bubbles, and cracked knuckles. "Son, people don't come here for cars. They come here because they trust you not to lie." Jackson placed the photo in a new frame and set it on his desk. Then he picked up the phone and dialed. Voice answered, a voice aged by time, but unmistakable. "Dad," Jackson said, "you up for a visit tomorrow?" His father chuckled. "Depends. You've got any cars that need washing?" Jackson smiled. "Always."